Thank you for being here. Today we are going to talk about an idea that sounds simple but can change how you see yourself. What if the thing you call perfectionism is not about being perfect at all? What if it's something much deeper? Fear of stepping into the power you already have. Carl Jung understood this fear well. He believed that most of us are not destroyed by our weaknesses. We are held back by our refusal to face our strength. And this truth is uncomfortable because it forces us to see the part of ourselves that we spend years hiding. We often think perfectionism is about high standards, about wanting the best, about caring deeply about quality. But look closer. Perfectionism rarely feels like joy. It feels like tension. It feels like postponing life until everything is safe, controlled, flawless. It's not about loving excellence. It's about fearing mistakes. And underneath that fear is something even bigger. Fear of being seen. Fear of owning what you could actually do if you stopped holding yourself back. Jung called this the fear of individuation, the process of becoming fully yourself. It sounds positive, but it terrifies people because it means breaking away from what's comfortable, from expectations, from the roles that keep life predictable. Think about how many projects never leave the notebook because someone says it's not ready. How many ideas die in the mind because someone says it's not perfect yet. Behind those excuses is not laziness. It's not lack of talent. It's the shadow of potential, the part of you that knows if you really tried, you could do something that changes everything. And change is dangerous, not because the world collapses, but because it forces you to leave the old self behind. That old self feels safe because it's familiar. The new self feels like exposure, like walking into a light that shows every flaw. So we cling to perfectionism as a shield. If it's never finished, it never has to be judged. If it never leaves our hands, no one can reject it. Perfectionism is not a love of perfection. It's a fear of failure disguised as virtue. But Jung saw something deeper. He said the shadow, the hidden part of the self, is not only darkness, it's power. It's everything we could be, but are afraid to be. When you silence anger, you silence assertiveness. When you deny desire, you deny passion. When you refuse to take risks, you refuse growth. This is why perfectionists often feel trapped. They are not trapped by their standards, they are trapped by their refusal to own what they really want. Freedom to act without apology. Freedom to succeed without guilt. Freedom to step beyond the limits that were handed to them by parents, culture, and sometimes religion. And here's the part most people never talk about. Why does this fear exist at all? Why does owning your power feel so threatening? Jung believed it's because society trains us to shrink. From childhood, you are told what is acceptable, what is proper, what is safe. Anything outside that box feels dangerous because it risks rejection. And for most of human history, rejection meant death. So the instinct to stay small is old, even though today it just keeps you invisible, not alive. And when you add the weight of belief systems that preach submission, obedience, and guilt, the fear grows. Many people stay locked in cycles of perfectionism because they were taught that ambition is pride, that confidence is sin, that strength must bow. These ideas don't make us humble, they make us afraid of our own life force. Look at how this plays out in daily life. A person spends years preparing to launch a business, but never does because they keep rewriting the plan. Another spends years working on a book, revising every chapter until the story dies in endless edits. Someone dreams of speaking out, sharing ideas, creating change, but they keep saying, "When I'm ready." But they're never ready, because ready is an illusion created by fear. These are not failures of skill, they're failures of courage, the courage to face your own capacity, because once you step into it, there's no turning back. Once you show the world what you can do, expectations change. People look to you. You have to keep standing in that light. That's why hiding behind perfection feels safe. It lets you stay invisible while telling yourself you're just being careful. And yet, this safety costs you everything. Jung warned that what you deny doesn't disappear. It festers. Unused potential turns into bitterness. Creativity locked away turns into envy of those who dared. The life unlived becomes a weight that drags down the life you have. And in the end, what most people regret is not what they tried and failed, it's what they never tried at all. Studies confirm this. Not the fear of trying, but a resolve to circle what you're looking at. Studies confirm this. In surveys of people at the end of life, the top regret is not taking the risks that mattered, not living true to themselves, not using their gifts. They don't talk about wishing they had been more perfect. They talk about wishing they had been more free. That's the tragedy of perfectionism. It steals the one thing you can never get back: time. The fear of power shows in small ways too. Notice how people deflect compliments, how they downplay their achievements, how they say, "It's nothing," when it's something. Notice how they fear leadership even when they're capable, how they hold back ideas in meetings because they don't want to seem arrogant. This is not humility, it's self-protection. Because power comes with responsibility, and responsibility means no more excuse. If you admit you're strong, you can't keep living weak. If you admit you're smart, you can't keep pretending you don't know better. And that truth scares people more than failure. Failure lets you hide. Success exposes you. That's why so many never leave the comfort of almost. Almost ready, almost great, almost alive. Jung believed the task of life is integration, bringing the hidden self into the open. And that means pulling your power out of the shadow, even when it shakes everything. It means letting go of perfection, because perfection is a mask. It means creating, speaking, acting while afraid, because fear doesn't leave first. You move first, and fear follows. And the moment you do, something shifts. You stop living as an apology, you stop editing yourself out of your own life. And that's when real freedom begins, not the freedom to be perfect, but the freedom to be whole. When we look closely at perfectionism, it becomes clear that it's never about quality. It's about control. People cling to the idea of being flawless because flaws feel like exposure, and exposure feels like weakness. This is why perfectionists rarely celebrate progress. They only see what's missing. That mindset doesn't create greatness, it creates paralysis. And at its core, it hides a deeper belief: if I make no mistakes, I can avoid judgment. But judgment isn't the real fear. The real fear is stepping fully into life and realizing that once you do, you can't hide anymore. That's the fear of power Jung spoke about. The fear of living unapologetically as who you are, because it means carrying the weight of your own choices without excuses. This fear is not born in a vacuum. It's planted early. As children, we are taught that love is conditional. We are rewarded when we behave and punished when we don't. We learn that approval comes when we fit the mold, not when we break it. Over time, this creates a quiet contract. If I do everything right, I'll be safe. And that contract grows stronger in systems that value obedience over individuality. Systems that call submission a virtue and self-assertion. Many religious traditions reinforce this cycle. They teach that pride is dangerous, that questioning is rebellion, that surrender is noble. These ideas don't just shape behavior, they shape identity. They make you distrust your own instincts. They make you fear ambition. They turn natural confidence into guilt. So when you feel the pull of your own potential, it feels wrong, even sinful, and to avoid that guilt, you retreat into perfectionism. You call it humility, but it's really fear. Jung warned that repression comes at a price. The energy you bury doesn't vanish, it leaks out in other ways, through anxiety, procrastination, resentment. That's why perfectionists often feel exhausted. It's not the work that drains them, it's the endless war against themselves. They are fighting the very force that could set them free. Because what they fear isn't imperfection, it's the moment they stop hiding and let their power show. How do you break this cycle? Jung believed it starts with awareness. You have to name the fear honestly. I'm not afraid of failing. I'm afraid of being seen. That truth is uncomfortable, but it's the doorway to change. The next step is integration. That means taking the qualities you've disowned, strength, ambition, creativity, and bringing them back, not as weapons but as tools. This doesn't happen overnight. It's a process of small acts of courage. Share the work before it feels ready. Speak the idea even if your voice shakes. Take the risk even when the outcome is uncertain. Every time you do, you pull another piece of yourself out of the shadow. And here's the paradox. The less you chase perfection, the better your work becomes. Why? Because perfectionism suffocates creativity. It turns every act into a performance for approval. But when you release the need to be flawless, you create from freedom, not fear. You stop asking, will they like it? And start asking, does this matter to me? And that shift changes everything. It gives your work life, it gives your voice truth, and it gives you back the energy you've been wasting on self-censorship. One more thing Jung understood. Power is not domination. It's not control over others. It's control over yourself, your choices, your direction, your voice. Owning that power is not arrogance, it's responsibility. Because the world doesn't suffer from people owning their gifts, it suffers from people burying them. Every invention, every movement, every idea that changed history came from someone who stopped hiding, not someone who waited for perfection, but someone who acted despite fear. So the next time you hear that inner voice whisper, "It's not ready," ask yourself, is that truth or is that fear disguised as virtue? And if it's fear, what would happen if you moved anyway? What would happen if you stopped editing yourself out of your own life? That question may feel dangerous, but so does every doorway to freedom. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this resonated, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me below, what's the one thing you've been holding back because it wasn't perfect? What would it look like to start, even imperfectly, today?